to have Dr. Jaishankar, the Foreign Minister, to be our opening keynote speaker. On behalf of USISPF and its board, I'd like to invite you to our third leadership summit. We do have participants, as I said, almost over 2,000 registered participants for this event this morning itself. Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine.
Okay. All right. I think it's important to understand that USISPF is the independent entity across US and India focused on strengthening the relationship with two countries. And we have friends like Dr. Jaishankar who are a big supporter on this mission itself. So we look forward to a conversation between Ambassador Romer and Minister Jaishankar. And before we hand over to Ambassador Romer, I would like John, the chairman of USISPF, to give his welcome remarks. John?
Mukesh, it's a pleasure. And Dr. Jaishankar, thank you once again for being such a huge partner in the relationship between our two countries. It's hard to believe that it's been 3 years since we formed USISPF and moved from a vision of a trade organization focused on how much trade do we do to a vision that we could change the roles of two countries, that we could do this in terms of innovation, that we could do it in an inclusive way across every state, 29 states in India, 50 states in the US. We could do it across gender barriers, religious barriers, etc., and focus on innovation and job creation. We set a goal many people said would be unattainable, and yet I would argue we made huge progress, and we would be the model for how countries work together, both business and government, the citizens, to impact everyone on an equal basis. Truly a win-win relationship. Last year's theme was very simple. It was about partnering for growth. In 12 months, we all know everything has changed. Now our theme is about navigating through new challenges. But for all of us in leadership, all of us in business, or as individuals, or even as parents, we know it is nice to talk about our growth, but it's how you handle your challenges, your setbacks, that determine who you are as an individual, a company, organization, or even a country. So we are changing with tremendous speed, and we've evolved from a trade organization to, I would argue, an enabler between groups in a way that has never been done before, and a model for others to follow. Mukesh, Gaurav, the whole USISPF team, I want to thank you for your leadership in just 3 short years, how far we've come. In startup terms, we've moved from a angel investment round to a unicorn and an IPO shortly. This last year, we've expanded to over 300 members. You all did 110 events already this year, 75 of them virtually, 35 physically in terms of the direction. And if you watch together, each of us have focused on the currency of the organization, currency of how our leaders interface back and forth, both business and government, with assistance in each country. And currency is nothing more, in my opinion, than the track record, nothing more than the relationships and the trust. And when you watch the trust among our leaders and you think about it and you begin to see individuals like the Foreign Minister, Dr. Jaishankar, who's been on both the political and on the business side, Vice President Pence that will be broadcasting shortly from the White House. You begin to see the Prime Minister's office in India. You begin to see the commerce departments from both countries involved in these sessions, the Finance Minister from India, the multiple members from the U.S. State Department, and you realize what we could do together. And we've done a tremendous job. I would actually argue that we can do so much more. And while the theme is around peace and stability and prosperity, our ability over the next 4 days to focus on defense, the economic relationships, the education, and just using it as an example, in the U.S., where a decade ago there were about 80,000 students in the U.S. from India. Now there are over 200,000. The India diaspora here in the U.S. is now over 4 million. The ability to bring innovation and true job creation to both countries through startups, and to have the courage to make the fundamental change in technology around 5G, artificial intelligence, the Internet of Things, and addressing the healthcare issues as well at the same time. A complex challenge, but I would argue without organizations like this, you can't achieve these type of goals. I'm going to challenge us to continue to dream what's possible together and to go for it and realize that there'll be setbacks along the way. So I want to thank all the 2,000 to 3,000 people who are joining us this morning and throughout the week. I want to congratulate the leadership of USISPF, just in terms of the tremendous job Mukesh, you and the team have done. But I don't want to rest on our successes. I want to challenge us to say we can do so much more. I think we're just getting started. And with the terrible challenges of navigating these new areas such as COVID, et cetera, you're suddenly seeing organizations move with the speed and use and embodiment of technology that has not been there before. So as we focus on these new challenges, let's dream together how we can change it. We won't always agree, but if we're able to get the issues out on the table and say, how do we solve those that are manageable, that will be the future. And as you start today's session, I'm going to ask each of you to write down what you think we should look like between our two countries 5 years from now, and say, how do we have the courage to take the business and political risks to get us there in a way that is inclusive for all of our people. So with that, Mukesh, I want to thank you. I'm going to turn it back to my friend Mark Allen, back to the general session.
Thank you, John. I now invite Mark Allen, President of Boeing International and USISPF board member, to make his remarks. Mr. Allen.
Always a friend.
Well, good morning, good evening to friends and colleagues in many parts of the world right now as we gather for this terrifically planned week. Thank you, Mukesh and John, for all the hard work that's gone into it, for your opening remarks. It's a real pleasure to be able to welcome next to the discussion, our opening discussion for the week, Minister Jaishankar, who's a dear friend to so many on this strategic partnership forum. As a scene setter, before we get in, U.S.-India relations have been growing stronger and stronger over years, and in large part driven by this incredible increase in convergence of interests, geopolitical interests, business interests, trade interests. We've long talked about the shared democratic values and the emphasis on rules-based order that's shared between our two nations. And of course, now more and more that value of the stable and peaceful Indo-Pacific is seen and felt between the countries. And I think it's fair to say that now it feels like there's an imperative to relationship growth. We are in unprecedented times, the realities of COVID, and of course, the rebalance to global supply chains that we have seen coming out of it, the shift in focus from productivity only to now productivity with resilience. And I think that creates some very unique opportunities, and it'll be wonderful to hear in the conversation between Ambassador Tim Romer and Minister Jaishankar what those opportunities might be and how we in the partnership forum can work together to help enhance and enlarge them. Clearly, India offers a wealth of productivity and growth opportunities for both Indian and U.S. companies. And we have seen that that starts with a deep and broad talent base, but also the national objectives around modernization, economic and business reform, and the industrialization advance that we've seen over the last many years, all are critical factors. They are more and more, however, supported by alliances, by partnerships, by technical collaborations between businesses, Indian and U.S. businesses working together.
Great. Thank you, Kerry. And I want to thank Mukesh and John Chambers for their terrific leadership and their acuity and world affairs and dedication to bringing India and the United States closer closer. I couldn't be with a more close and dearest friend, Minister Jaishankar, the Honorable Jaishankar. I think I saw you, Jay, a few months before COVID hit in your office in India, and we talked about many issues, some of which we'll try to discuss this morning. I am hopeful that I can get 8 or 9 questions in with your always very sharp answers and maybe briefer than they usually are, so that our listeners can hear as much of you as possible. And I look forward to the next 20 minutes or so to talk to you and understand more about India's foreign policy, their place on the stage in world affairs, and the strategy that's going to guide you going forward. My first question, Jay, and again, it's great to see you. I'm very excited to have you on screen. In your brand new book, which comes out in a few days, called The India Way, you reflect on the transformations going on in the world and the rapid change. You specifically talk about what this means for India, and you say it requires a bolder, non-reciprocal relationship with your neighbors and a larger global footprint. This sounds like a strategy, Jay. How are you executing on this? And how are you looking forward to the sales of your book coming up?
Okay. No. Huh? No, I'm not getting sound.
Did you hear that, Jay? Gary, if you can connect us, we were connected very well. We had a nice discussion in the green room and we were talking back and forth. But now when we've gone live, it seems like the minister can't hear.
Okay. Sorry, Tim, I lost you a little bit in there. So if you can just sum it up for me, my apologies, but we had a bit of a glitch somewhere.
No problem, Jay. The question is about your pending new book, The India Way, and you talk about all the transformation and change in the world. You talk about how this requires a bolder, non-reciprocal relationship with your neighbors and a bigger footprint for India in the world. This sounds like a strategy.
Right.
How are you executing on this strategy?
Well, look, first of all, Tim, great to see you. And like you, I want to thank John, recognize John and Mukesh. I think they've done a fantastic job in USISPF. And, I missed the period when I was part of the board. So it's great to have an opportunity to join this event. In terms of how we look, at the world, obviously today, India's growth has to be a lifting tide for the entire region. We need to invest in the neighborhood. We need to build more connectivity projects. And we're already doing that. I mean, if you look at it in the last 5 years, India is a supplier of electricity to most of its neighbors, fuel to many of them. You're saying, more waterways, ports, railways. There's a lot of regional investment which India is making today. And our sense is you're going to get a much better integrated region, a much more connected region. But one needs to go beyond that. I think today there's a very ambitious India-Africa policy out there. We are trying to, we are opening missions and embassies in almost all the countries, expanding our projects, doing more business out there. Of course, with the more developed world, with the established markets, again, we've been very, very supportive of greater business activity. So when I speak of a larger Indian global footprint, I just don't mean a diplomatic footprint. We also are looking at an economic footprint, a technology footprint, in some ways a security footprint. That's the kind of relationship we think we should be heading for.
So along these lines, and I want to get to about 7 or 8 questions following this one for our listeners and followers, especially in the business community. We have about 149 billion now currently going on in two-way trade between the United States and India, Jay, as you know. And many people on this call are interested in building a mutually beneficial relationship. What are some of the things people on this call can do to help get over some of the hurdles and obstacles that are currently in the path of a more conducive economic relationship for both sides?
Well, I think from the Indian side, obviously we see the path of recovery, of economic recovery after Corona as very much focused on improving ease of doing business, of actually looking at the specific problems which companies have. So you're going to see a much stronger G2B sort of approach to that particular domain. You have already, you're already seeing policies which are promotional of greater business energies. You've seen on the electronic hardware side, production-linked incentive policies. You've seen on the agriculture side, freeing up the market for farmers in a much better way. I think you're going to get many more policies which would attract, which would incentivize investment and working together. But shifting gears, I'd say, there are two big lessons out of the Corona period. One, it's actually made us all very much more digital, including the fact that I'm talking to you in the way in which I am, in our daily habits in different ways. It's also brought out the importance of resilient and trusted supply chains, that we need in the world today partners who can be depended on even in difficulties. So I think those are very important drivers of future business between us. Today we have, I think, a level of political trust between India and the United States which we didn't in the past. It's expanded to different domains. We've seen the defense landscape transform. We've seen an energy business come out of nowhere. My sense is today, all of that, how do we use that to really build more comfort and confidence on the business side? I see that happening in the next year or two.
That's great to hear, and I agree with you that defense relationship can pave the way for maybe some breakthroughs on the commercial side as well, too. So as we talk about this defense relationship, Mr. Minister, the U.S. are growing closer and closer all the time. When officials meet, hopefully in person, for the third Indo-U.S. 2+2 meeting late October, these talks are going to cover many important things, probably tensions with China, air and missile defense systems, anti-submarine warfare, the Indo-Pacific. Broader cooperation could consist of, talking about the Quads and expanding the Quads. We also could have a breakthrough on one more of the foundational agreements, something I worked on a few years ago, trying to get all three of those done. We could get to the last one. How do you think this is going to go in October between India and the United States? Do you think we're going to have a series of continued deepening of the ties, and where specifically do you see that?
Tim, listening to you, I felt that for a few moments that you almost had the agenda of the meeting, or at least you were trying to set it.
First time in my life I've been right, Jay.
I'd say this, what we have seen, over the last many years is a much stronger sort of convergence of interests, a much greater ability to work together. So we've seen that initially begin with policy, then it moved on to exercises, then there were, there was defense trade. Today there are American platforms which are in the Indian military inventory. So when you have policy exercises, equipment, all coming together, then obviously the convergence is certainly in this defense and security side deepen. Now, we look upon it not as something which is tailored to a particular situation or necessarily focused on some country. This is not a short-term issue. It is a larger ability of India and the United States coming together, looking at the world and saying, what do? We think alike in so many ways. Our interests are so similar in so many domains. So what do we do to actually secure the world, make it, a better place? So I'm not sure I would put it quite in the terms in which you put it. I mean, to me, this is a very important and integral part of a larger India-US, and in a sense, a larger world situation that is coming into being. I think the United States is looking at, a country like India, which is outside, which has never been in any alliance situation, with a much more open mind than it used to in the past. And India, too, on its part, is actually looking at, countries with whom clearly there are strong identity of interests and seeing how. So we've both become much more pragmatic, perhaps, than we have in the past. I think it reflects our understanding of this changed landscape that we are living in.
So along those lines, I agree with you completely that we've had so many breakthroughs with defense platforms, with agreements on the Indo-Pacific, with our sharing convergent views of an aggressive China. However, as usual, there's usually something that pops up that causes, Jay, the diplomatic community, the gifted people like you, sleepless nights to work through. India's recently had an embargo on 101 defense and arms imports to be implemented progressively over the next few years. And, this creates some issues. How would you give advice to people on the perspective of, navigating through these kinds of issues and back toward the agenda that you and I just discussed for the 2+2 meeting?
I'm not even sure I'd use the word you used, embargo. I think my understanding is that these are items where we hope that products would be made in India, and if they're going to be made in India, and frankly, when I looked at that list, I mean, these products should be made in India. I mean, given the fact that we have this manufacturing capability, and we are today among the top 5 economies of the world. So I see no reason why they necessarily need to be bought from abroad. So I actually think that there's a great opportunity here for countries to invest in defense manufacturing. And actually the terms of investment have become much more liberal. So I'd say very frankly to everybody through you, it's good for business. It's good for your business.
Well, we certainly see a lot of challenges in China these days, and a lot of U.S. businesses are frustrated and aggravated there. They're looking, if not to move from China, when they establish new supply lines, new manufacturing partnerships, to look at the possibility of India and coming back home to America. So whatever India can do to, take this into consideration and try to make sure local content issues, set aside requirements for buying on the defense side. Let's try to make sure we can navigate those issues for our prospective business. Let me jump back, Jay, to immigration and education and the very, very strong people-to-people ties that we have between the United States and India. The vibrant diaspora here in the United States, the Indian community is becoming more and more powerful and engaged. Immigration's a key issue, and Indians are a large and beneficial part of the recipients of H-1B work visas, where they get about 69.9% of those work visas. We think this is very important to bring Indians here to the United States. How do we continue to strengthen these people-to-people ties and explain why this immigration policy is good for both countries?
Tim, if I can just close out the previous question with one additional remark, which is that the direction that we are going in India, the policy that we are going to adopt is what it's called Atmanirbhar Bharat, which is like a more self-reliant India. But what that means is try to, it's a program to increase our national capacities. And obviously manufacturing capacities is very much at the heart of it. So I would actually tell American business that, look, if India is India seeking to expand its capacities, there's a real, there's a whole lot of new business opportunities which have opened up for you out there. And particularly if India makes it easier to do business, it's also, been much more liberal in terms of ownership by foreign investment. So I just want to kind of stress that. And also the fact that we are much more interested in sort of global value chains actually now, including passing through India, using Indian production capacities as part of a chain. And the fact that we would be seen as trusted and seen as resilient is something which should be helpful. Regarding the immigration issue, look, again, we're talking of a more digital world, we're talking of a more technology-driven world, which really puts a premium on talent. Okay. Now, if there's one thing which India, I think, can offer to the world, it is trusted talent. You see Indians working across companies in the world. I think they've always done well. They've always, done what is the right thing in their particular environment. So there is a great deal of regard and trust for Indians and people of Indian origin. The point I would make there is a more knowledge-driven global economy will require more trusted talent. I think that's an opportunity for India. It's an opportunity which should be reflected to some degree in American immigration policies. I think immigration certainly is a win-win. If you look, you've had views on it, even in India in the last 15, 20 years. I don't think people think like that anymore. People recognize the enormous sort of role which actually Indian talent has made in the American economy, in the global economy, and come back in India, the catalytic role that they've had. So I would certainly urge that this is an area where the United States should recognize what's in American interest, and that, believe me, happens to be in Indian interest as well.
Well said, Jay, and I agree. There's intense, vibrant competition for talent and capital and supply chains. And the more the United States and India can work through some of these issues and have breakthroughs so that we are closer and closer on those fronts, the better our economic systems will be, the better recovery from COVID, and the stronger our democracies will be. Jay, you've spent a lot of time in China as Indian ambassador there. I want to ask a China question, but frame it in terms of Pakistan. Last week, Imran Khan, the Prime Minister of Pakistan, said, quote, "Pakistan's future is tied to China. We should be clear that our country's development has now been intertwined with China." Now, he walked back some of those remarks later, but he attributed some of that to the U.S. signing the agreement with the Taliban and then Chinese investment in Pakistan. How do you see, this aggressive China around the world, from the South China Sea to Huawei and technology, and how does that play with your delicate relationship and important relationship with Pakistan?
Well, Tim, I think obviously, like every other country in the world, we are very cognizant of the rise of China. We are an immediate neighbor of China. So obviously, if you're a neighbor, you are very directly impacted by the rise of, what I say in my book is a potential global power. Now, a lot of our attention obviously is how do we find, I mean, India has also been rising in this period, okay? Maybe not to the same degree at the same pace as China, but if you look at the last 30 years, I mean, clearly India's rise has also been one of the major global stories. So if you have two countries, two societies, 1 billion people each, with the history and culture that they have, it's very important that they reach some kind of understanding or equilibrium between them. This is a practical world. I mean, if a country is going to get more powerful, we're going to see its influence in areas, in geographies we have not seen before. We're going to see activities and capabilities that we have not seen before. Now, we will see that from China, and I dare say in some areas they will see it of us. So how do we, this modus vivendi between India and China, I actually say in my book that this is extremely consequential for both countries and actually for the rest of the world. Now, as regards, China's relationship with Pakistan, it is not something that is new. It goes back actually to the early 60s. Aspects of it have been of concern to us before. Even that is not new. Obviously, that is something which we factor in our relationship with both countries.
Let me sum up here, Jay, and ask you one final question. You can spend a minute on it or as long as you'd like. How do you see America today from a military power, soft power, and prestige perspective? Are they able to execute and achieve things from a strategic viewpoint in the world today? How do you view America from that perspective?
Tim, I would say obviously the United States is going through its own debates, its own changes, its own conversations, and as a foreign country, we are very respectful of it, but we obviously follow it like the rest of the world with very great interest. The point I would make, which I do make with people in India, is look, to a large extent, these are your conversations, even if they impact the world. But we Indians should be comforted by the fact that over many administrations of both Democratic and Republican, our relationship has steadily grown. And not just over many administrations. I mean, if I come to Washington, I mean, I would have friends in both political parties and sometimes in different, a wide diversity of opinions, not me necessarily personally, but even as a country. So I think while we will, obviously follow all these developments with deep interest, and we look at the ramifications of your policy in different regions. I mean, right now, for example, what's going on vis-a-vis Afghanistan is of very deep interest to us. So all of that would happen, but I have every confidence that, the United States is the United States. And in many ways, you have a remarkable sort of sense of resilience and I would say in many ways, your footprint, the linkages you have with the world are really very, very unique. And as an Indian foreign minister, I am very assured by the fact that my relationship with the United States is in a very strong position.
That's great to hear. Well, you, as always, Jay, have been succinct and brilliant in your answers. It's so good to see you. I hope we can get together soon. I want to say thank you on behalf of John Chambers and Mukesh Aghi and all the businesses with our partnership, trying to work on deepening and improving U.S.-India relations. I think it's the most important relationship, especially between two democracies going forward. And I also, on a personal accord, Jay, want to just say how fortunate the people of India are to have somebody of your talent and dedication and public service. from somebody who has served in the United States and in China and around the world, and now is external affairs minister. I was hopeful that your son would follow in your path and go into public service, but he's going to be doing well in the private sector where I work at APCO Worldwide. We work on technology all the time, so I wish him well. And my friend, I hope to see you in person soon. Thank you for your time this evening and this morning, and I look forward to your success coming up with the 2+2.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure. Take care. Good to see you.
You too.
Thank you, Dr. Jaishankar and Ambassador Wilmer. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our next speaker, Chase Robinson, Director of the Arthur M. Sackler Gallery and Fuller Gallery of Art at the Smithsonian Institution's National Museum of Asian Art, for his remarks on the interwoven fabric